Panels, I think the dynamics of this debate is not strategic because our main burden of proof today is to answer which sides will going to create a better core practicality, essence of punishment, criminal justice system, and deterrence effect. But governments spend too much time defending the value of culture, defending the essence of diversity, but they never explain to you in which the proposal, how are they going to create the deterrence effect, how are they going to use logical reasonings, how are they going to use accountable evidence. Vira came up with the idea of investigation. It's coming late from her, but even if it's creditable, it will still be overshadowed. It will still overshadow the cultural defense because court in the court procedure they prioritize accountable evidence, accountable investigation. So even if cultural defense is passed, it will still fail at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Panels, we have a humongous amount of culture that exists around us. Government never explains to you that why the consistency of law will still happen. In order for you to accept cultural defense, you have to create a certain adjustments. It's just likely for you to make the court to be consistent because you cannot standardize the value of culture because it has different characteristics and it has complexity in its value, let alone the existence of culture that is backlashing with one another. So it's not feasible to standardize the cultural defense in their side of the house. Thirdly, cultural defense, it's not going to be ideal because it's not relying on logical reasoning. It only relies on narratives that this is my culture's value, you have to deal with this. This is my cultural requirements. I'm okay to do a certain things. Meaning that the cultural defense will most likely overshadow, just like what I explained to you in the discussions, because there are still politicians, judges, and juries that prioritize persuasive, rational, logical reasoning. Society will also expect the jury to be more accountable, to be more rational, to be more logical, because cultural defense is something that is not general to the majority. So the society will still be accustomed to the status quo, in which to criminalize someone. It's based on their tangible outcome, if it's harmful for universal cause or not, ladies and gentlemen. Going to the clash first, is it justified? I think argumentations coming from government only explains the aspects of culture. First, they said that cultural practice is consistent and rigid and changeable. This is not true. Cultural practice is changeable. But for example, back in the day, a certain kind of allows slavery, but the terms have begun to change. This shows you that cultural practice is inconsistent, in which law needs consistency. Law needs consistency in order for them to be labeled by society as something that's consistent, because it affects your daily life, ladies and gentlemen. Even if it's consistent and rigid and changeable, it is accustomed by conservatism, so it will not be able to cope up with the progress of law itself, ladies and gentlemen. Secondly, the characterization of consideration is not strategic in court judgment. They come up with the idea that minor punishment is mitigatable because the minor is irrational. They claim that it's identical with their proposal. Exactly, panels, it's different with cultural defense, because those who are done the crime based on cultural requirements, they are already irrational enough to determine their own moral compass, ladies and gentlemen. It's different when you are mental illness. It's different when you are a minor. So those characteristics doesn't stand in this debate, ladies and gentlemen. Thirdly, they said that it respects the value of the culture. This will not happen, ladies and gentlemen, because society will still be rational enough to criminalize the culture. They won't normalize your crime based on your culture, because they will still criticize you because what you do is harmful for the universal cause, ladies and gentlemen. Lastly, they said that they have interest to defend the culture. This is problematic to begin with, ladies and gentlemen, because those individuals will not be progressive, because they will still accustomed to normalize the narrative that my culture is holy. I'm justified to kill people, ladies and gentlemen. In comparison to opposition side house, our opposition side house sticks to the characteristic work of criminal justice system, which the parameter of crime is to punish someone if they have the intention to do crime. Personal interest, they have no intention to prevent the crime from happening. Neny already explained to you that the characteristic of perpetrators has personal intention and interest to do the crime from the very first place, in which they are already rational enough to differentiate which one is good, which one is bad. The one who is doing the crime, the perpetrator, the one who kills, murders, enslaves people, is the perpetrator themselves, meaning that they already self-consent upon the consequences, ladies and gentlemen. Even if it's cultural requirements, even if it's culture that influence them, meaning that these perpetrators still have personal interest because they want to gain validation from the community, ladies and gentlemen. Even if the culture that influence them, the perpetrator could have prevent the crime from happening. So they still have personal interest. And it's justified to criminalize them based on the criminal justice system itself. Upon to the second clash, which sides will create the deterrence effect? We challenge government to answer the burden of proof in this debate, in which sides will going to create better deterrence effect. But they never really explain to us how are they going to create deterrence effect, ladies and gentlemen. In comparison to our side house, we already explained to you that cultural defense won't create deterrence effect because it gives the legitimacy of the crime of the cultural committee. It will create the narrative that I have legitimate reasons to do my crime because my culture already been legitimized by the court. It gives superiority complex to the culture itself. Secondly, why is this harmful? Because it's not going to create deterrence effect at the end of the day, legitimate. It normalizes the crime because they feel that it's necessary to commit a certain crime. In conclusion, the culture committee will not be open to constructivism, ladies and gentlemen, because they already accustomed to the narrative that my culture is superior. In our side of the house, the deterrence effect will still happen because we assure to be as objective as possible because we're not going to compromise with the subjectivity of culture itself. Lastly, comparing to the worst case scenario. Our worst case scenario that yes, maybe the essence of, if you want to engage that you want to defend culture, yes, maybe the essence of culture will be reduced on a certain level. We say that it is okay because to defend this, what will be traded off is those values that are harmful for the universal cause. The values that will be traded off is those unnecessary, the values that are unnecessary for the universal cause, unnecessary for the development of the law, unnecessary for the development to create a moral compass, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's not logical because it's not logical to kill someone because there's a narrative that allows you to kill someone. What we want to defend is that you should be criminalized, you should be punished because you kill people, you cause harm to their families, you cause harm to their own self, ladies and gentlemen. So why in outside house the deterrence effect, the court practicality will be achieved under their side house. If you want to follow their proposal, they only came up with the essence of cultural aspects, yada yada yada, and so on and so forth. So it's not ideal and strategic to follow with their proposal. They should have been more contributive on explaining why in the side house logical reasoning will still happen and will not overshadow the cultural defense. We're proud to oppose.